What determines the outcome of something? He said sometimes we do something, people love it, they support us. Sometimes we do the exact same thing, people don't love us, they don't support us. Absolutely. This is where nothing happens in a vacuum. It's all about the intelligence and the motivation of what we're doing in that intersection of time and space. The intention of it. So if I say to you, is taking a knife and stabbing it in somebody's chest a good deed or a bad deed? Exactly. Well, but more than that, it depends on who I am. If I'm a robber, it's a bad deed. If I'm a murderer, it's a bad deed. If I'm a doctor, it's a great deed. Somebody has just had a heart attack, they're on my operating table, they're going to die if I don't perform open heart surgery immediately. It's a great deed. Intention, exactly. And it's not even so much the outcome, because as a doctor, the man could die on my operating table. That's the karmic package he came in with. I may have done my absolute best, and I could still lose him. But what matters to the universe in terms of my karma is what I've done, not whether he lived or died. That's in God's hands. Similarly, if my intention was bad, I took a knife, I was mugging somebody to steal their things or to kill them. By God's grace, they didn't die, they lived. I'm going to still get the karmic fruit, as well as the fruit of the court of justice. You know, you asked about the divine court of justice. Well, in many ways, it's similar to the one we have here. The fact that the guy didn't die might absolve me of a murder charge, but it's not going to absolve me of the intent to murder charge. I could still be thrown away for the rest of my life, even though the guy is still alive, because I had an intention to murder him. Attempted murder is a serious felony. So it's not just the time, it's the whole situation, it's the whole intention. But also what you're realizing is societal norms and cultural norms. There are times that certain things are appropriate, places that certain things are appropriate, but this is where, if we get ourselves bogged down in people's approval, we're going to go crazy. If your intention is, I should make people happy, people should approve of me. Well, last week I did action A. Everybody loved me, so I'm going to do action A again this week, but this week people don't support me. Well, I'm going to go crazy. If my highest goal is people's support, they supported me last week, they didn't support me this week, I'll go mad. Because there may be a reason that they changed, there also may not be a reason they changed. People are fickle. People were in one place one week, a different place a different week. And this is where what I do cannot be based on people's approval. It has to be based on my own internal, what Puja Swamiji calls GPS. The only approval that should matter to us really is our parents when we're young, because they really do know best, especially when we're very young. Our gurus and gods. as long as you're good with your guru and God, don't worry about what the rest of people say. Those are the two who really have your best interest at heart, your highest interest at heart. Everybody else has got their own personal baggage, whether they want something from you or whether it's just, I'm in a good mood, I'm in a bad mood, it's a good day, it's a bad day, whatever it may be. But you cannot hook your own peace into other people's reactions. It has to be hooked only into my center, my core, my connection with God. Okay. Yes. Do I believe in astrology? Absolutely, I believe in astrology. I don't necessarily believe every astrologer. It's an important distinction. I believe in medicine doesn't mean I'm going to follow everybody who calls themselves a doctor. Astrology is a science, like medicine. Some people are really experts. Other people are quacks. This is true about almost every field. The issue with astrology is it's somewhat less easy to measure than regular medicine. You walk into a regular doctor, you've got a fever, you've got blood pressure, you've got cholesterol, you've got diabetes, you've got obesity, there's ways to measure you're improving, you're not improving, this is an infection, it's not an infection, we've got cultures, we've got all sorts of things we can do. With astrology, it's not quite so easy to measure. And so it tends to lend itself much more to everyone and their brother being an expert, which is sad because it's taking advantage of people's faith, and it's taking advantage of a science that really is a science. The only other point I would mention on that is, for me, the reason I believe in it is purely a scientific reason. If you've ever been on the ocean and you've experienced the difference between high tide and low tide, which you know can be many, many feet in places. I mean, there are places where high tide covers up 15, 20, 30 feet of sand or rocks or tide pools. It goes out, and in low tide, there is an entire world that exists in tide pools or in the sand that isn't there in high tide. And I mention that because the ocean is huge. The volume of water in the ocean is enormous. And the thing that actually determines high tide and low tide is the pull of the moon. Astrologers can tell you high tide and low tide for the next 10 years based on the phases of the moon. So the pull, the gravitational pull of one moon on the ocean is enough to change that water from being non-existent to covering 30 feet. Well, the human body is pretty much water. And so for us to assume that pull is strong enough to turn low tide into high tide and high tide into low tide, but it doesn't have any impact on the water in me? I mean, what we know is the smaller the container, the greater the impact. Right? If I shake this glass a little, it's going to splash all over. If I use the same amount of force and I shake a bucket, it's not going to pour out at all. If I use the same amount of force and I try to shake a lake, it's not going to budge. So we are actually impacted simply by virtue of the size of our container. A lot more, it means, even than the ocean. And so that magnetic pull is creating changes in our body. Not high tide, not low tide, but something. So I absolutely believe in it. I mean, that's the reason I believe in it. Is I've looked at the ocean, I know it works there. It's the most logical extension of that, knowing that we're also water, that it's also impacting us. But no, I don't believe many astrologers.